As my businesses have evolved and changed over time, I've explored so many different ways of funding. Everything from, it's been predominantly my own money, meaning profits that I have earned from the business itself and leaving them in the business, or money that I made prior to starting a business. In some cases, using credit cards and lines of credit, have created what's called venture debt, which is your own, basically creating your own loans and then finding people to lend money that you then pay a return on. And that is a good approach if you don't want to give up equity. It might be easier to list the methods that I haven't tried as opposed to all the ones that I have tried.
In my beamer, all day I drive around in my beamer.
There are so many different ways that you can fund a business. For us, what made the most sense is bootstrapping. By bootstrapping, that basically means that we used the cash that we had on hand and went as lean as possible to get our business off of the ground. So we didn't take any investor money. We basically just figured out a way to do it with the small budget that we had.
In my opinion, I always like the idea of a bootstrap. It gives you a limited amount of budget that you can work with. It pushes you to be creative and efficient. So for me, again, it all depends on what kind of business you're starting. But I believe for your very first one, bootstrapping, if this is something that you're kind of getting into, that's the best way to do it. Use your mind, use your creativity, because those will take you a long way. And even if you do find funding later on, that creativity, that's going to take you to a whole nother level.
What do I think is the best way to fund a business? I don't think there's an answer to that question. It depends on the business, depends on the funding. I actually think the best way to fund a business is through multiple revenue streams. One of the things that I learned pretty early on in my journey is that you want to cultivate as many revenue streams as you can so you're not entirely dependent on just one. So that way, if things bottom out and go tits up, you aren't completely SOL. So I would say that the best way to fund a business is through a diversified income stream that works for you and your business.
The best way to fund your business, in my opinion, is with your own money. Don't bring it on anyone else, no investors. If you can do it, and it's difficult, you want to fund your business with your own money. That way you don't owe anyone anything.
So we funded our business using our own money. I mean, that's just the way we did at the beginning. Still do it to this day.
In the beginning, it was Kickstarter, so other people's money, people that thought the idea could fly, and then our own cash.
For us, we bootstrapped for basically the first 3 years of our business. It wasn't until this year in 2021 where we actually took money, and that was in the form of an SBA loan at the ridiculously low rates of 2.5% interest, and not even a payback in the first couple of years. So it made a lot of sense for us to use that money to kind of pay ourselves back for the last 3 years, as well as start investing into creating some growth within some of our marketing aspects of the business.
When we started off, we were very dependent on members, donations, event fees, program fees, things like that. As time has gone on and we have progressed and grown, I've put a lot of focus on building out sponsor partnerships. I have put a lot of focus on strategic partnerships that come with revenue streams. So I'm really trying to make sure that we have a diverse list of income opportunities so that we're not fully dependent on one, and so that we're not building our organization on the back of our members.
Debt is bad if you ask Dave Ramsey. Debt is good if you ask Robert Kiyosaki. So debt can be held in two different regards. I guess it's a perspective and how you actually use it. I haven't been a fan of debt financing. I think that's added pressure that I would rather not have to make that capital investment, or that payment on that capital investment that somebody made on either in your business or using a credit card or using loans. It's just not something I am personally comfortable with.
I don't know if it works for you and you can secure a good interest rate and you have a positive relationship with your banking institution, go for it. Definitely go into it with both eyes open, understanding that, yeah, you have to pay it back for sure. But yeah, if it works for you, it works for you. That's awesome.
I think debt financing is a fine way to go. I think you need to weigh your options as to what's going to work best for you. For me personally, I liked not having to give up any sort of equity in my company. And, the key to the debt financing too is just to pay it back as quickly as possible. And so don't pay on the minimums, pay way above the minimums, get it paid off as quickly as you possibly can, and keep driving your business forward.
A really common way that fast-growing businesses or businesses in early stages raise capital is through debt financing. And debt financing or funding can be created a whole lot of different ways. And it can be everything from convertible notes to creating bonds, promissory notes, a whole lot of stuff. But really what you're saying is, hey, I'm going to take this debt from you and I'm going to pay it back. And often I'm going to pay it back with interest. I'm going to pay it back with some kind of return, or it often and very commonly comes with different types of options, meaning like the person that makes the investment or the debt financier, as opposed to to you that might be receiving the money, the person that's putting the money or making the investment will have an option to convert the debt into ownership of the company. Or maybe they don't want to convert that debt into ownership of the company and instead leave it as debt that then gets to be repaid. Overall, debt financing and funding is probably the most common type that you'll find out there.
I think the idea of venture capital is cool. Getting venture capital is a whole nother story. There's so much involved. Rightly so. If someone's going to invest in you, they have lots of questions, and you have to have lots of proof, and that proof has to be validated. So it's a challenge. For those people that get venture capital, kudos to you, man. But it's hard.
What do I think about venture capital? I would love to one day strike a deal with a venture capitalist group. I've got a lot of different business plans that would require a lot more than just bootstrapping. For KC Hemco, I don't know if we'll ever need a venture capitalist group. I don't see that being the case. But other avenues of business and industry, as far as being an entrepreneur, I would love to strike one of those deals. It's like one of the big fish, right?
I feel like with the right investor who has values that align with yours, it can be a really powerful, fantastic thing.
Venture capital, which is often referred to as VC or institutional money, is money that is collected in funds and then basically invested on behalf of the fund and its investors into companies in exchange for a portion of ownership of the company. There's a lot of different ways that it comes about. Now, some people are adverse and don't want to accept venture capital. They think it's the devil or it's not right or they want to avoid it. I'm personally a huge fan of it. I think that these kinds of funds and firms are set up to try to help you be successful. Venture capital is a means to an end that can drive a whole lot of money, input, connections, assets, resources, and stuff into your business in order to make it grow at a light speed. So as long as you are undergoing diligence and making sure you're getting investment from the right people, those same people are in the business of helping you, and they have a huge interest at that point in helping you create something that is way bigger than yourself and is super valuable.
Now, crowdfunding is dope because and correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, you don't got to pay that back. That's pre-selling and people kind of, understanding what it is that you're doing, see your vision, and maybe pre-buy into what it is that you're up to. So if that's the case, and I've never really 100% looked into it, so as you can tell, I'm a rookie in that space. But if that's the case, that's super awesome. That's literally the market telling you that you have a viable product, that people are willing to buy from you, pre-order from you, invest in you. That's super cool. I think crowdfunding is actually a really good way to go because not only do you get the funding that you need to actually launch a product, but you have essentially an army of people who are willing to talk and promote and buy your product. That's a market. That's what you want in business.
I think crowdfunding is a great way to start, especially if you don't need, $50,000 to $500,000 to start. People are willing to give you money, in small increments, $20, $100, just to see if something that they're into, your idea, will take off. I've been successful with crowdfunding. It was a very easy way to get started. And with a product like Mixtape, it was a game. So people play games, they like games, they might just want a sticker for their $20, and then hopefully one day they walk into a Target or a store and they see the game that they helped fund on the shelves. So crowdfunding is a great way to get started.
With crowdfunding, I think it's awesome. Crowdfunding is a way to really engage your community. It's a way to grab a lot of fans. We did not go crowdfunding. I actually did look into it at first. We looked at doing a crowdsourcing for some funds a year or so ago, and then opted out and just continued going with our bootstrapping model. But it's really, there's some really unique ways that you can go about doing the crowdfunding that can be very advantageous depending on the type of business that you are trying to run.
Crowdfunding got its start with things like Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and it was originally very product-centric or even organization-centric, like saying, hey, support my organization, support my product. Crowdfunding is a way that people that had ideas and had entrepreneurial ideas or innovations created or acquired enough capital to make orders to fund the initial creation of a product, or maybe take a prototype and create enough of them that it became financially viable both to fill the orders and also start a company. Now, overall, crowdfunding has really grown, and companies like Our Crowd make it possible for certain types of investors to get involved and make very small or sometimes sizable investments in vetted startups. Now, these kind of platforms are out there and making it a heck of a lot easier to get investment in your startup in small amounts from huge numbers of people, which can add up to a whole lot of money. So overall, crowdfunding is, I don't want to say it's in its infancy, it's maybe in its adolescence, but it is becoming a very accepted and widely used tool to raise capital and gain investment in all different types and forms and styles of business.
So I actually love crowdfunding. I know a lot of innovators who have successfully brought in significant funding via crowdfunding campaigns. And I think that, at least in what we do and what a lot of our members do, crowdfunding is this really fantastic opportunity because not only does it gets you money, but it also gets you people's buy-in. When people donate 10, 20, 30, 50, $100 to something, they feel invested in it. Like that's something that I contributed to, and I was able to contribute to your journey. I was able to contribute to your business. And so I love that aspect of funding. Like I wish that we could do more of it.
Why are people focused on VC money? Because it's cool. I mean, who doesn't want a shark on their team, or who doesn't want to say that they raised millions of dollars? You know, it's funny because we're creating a culture that doesn't really even have to focus so much on net profits, just growth. And that's kind of scary in my mind anyways. But yeah, the short answer is VC money is cool. To say that we made, we were able to raise $4 million in our first round of funding. I mean, to a lot of people, that's status. That is the epitome or the success of a business. Not that your product actually helped people or you turned a profit. It's how much VC money can you raise.
I think a lot of founders are focused on VC money because that's what they have learned is the only way to be successful. There are lots of alternative ways to get funded or to raise capital, but VC is the one that probably gets the most attention, it gets the most headlines, and the most successful unicorns in the entrepreneur world were all backed by venture capitalists, right? But it's not the only way. It's probably the most sexy way because the numbers are probably usually larger amounts, in the millions or whatever, but I think it's just people needing to educate themselves more on the alternative ways to get their business started.
I don't personally know too many founders that are hyper-focused on venture capitalist money, but I can definitely see the allure of it. That's a huge cash injection when you land one of those deals. And so depending on what you're trying to build, that can be pivotal to success and failure. So I totally understand it. It's just not for our business model.
Why are so many founders so focused on VC money? I definitely think there's like a piece of it that, it's a very sexy term and a very sexy concept. Like, oh, I have this big investor who's wanting to invest in my business. So I do think that there's a little bit of sexiness about it. If you have VC funding, you have been validated. You have been validated by someone who is hyper-focused on the landscape in which you operate. And that's a really powerful thing.
So my business is dependent on cash and funding, but not to a super extreme extent. I mean, nothing that I do has a net 30, net 60, net 90 type invoicing. Everything is paid up front. So, as long as I manage cash flow correctly, I'm in a comfortable spot. But in the insurance game, that's a whole different ballgame. We might close business today and not get paid on it for 90 days out. And in that case, we're very dependent on funding being in place to manage things like payroll for whatever reason. Maybe we have 3 payrolls in a month or whatever the situation might be. So we got to make sure that we have either reserve cash or debt that is there that we can reach into to kind of pull out if we need to fund.
For KC Hemp Company, we have never been dependent on funding to continue with our business outside of our bootstrapping. That really continues to remain the same, even though we've taken this debt finance loan with or the SBA loan. But the truth is that's more for scaling and growth. We don't need it to survive. Honestly, we're profitable just the way that we are. It's just a matter of how big do we want to scale the business, how much investment and growth do we want to put into it. And those are the things where funding can really come in and be advantageous to use.
Full Scale, or my business, has not been dependent on external funding for quite some time. Now, that said, the company's only 3 years old, and about halfway through the timeline, we created what was called venture debt. So we created our own promissory notes and basically took in loans from people we know. We agreed to, in a scheduled way, over a 3-year repayment period, pay those loans back with a percentage return. Why did we do that? We did it because we weren't ready to sell equity, meaning Matt and I, so Matt Watson is my business partner, we didn't want to sell any shares of the company yet. We weren't really sure how big the company could get, how big it was getting, because we grew really fast. I mean, we had 100 employees after 12 months. So we really needed to get some money in hand to finance our future operations and our growth. And then at the same time, then we ended up hitting a pandemic. So overall, since that, that money that came in from our venture debt, funded our growth, funded our operations, and then we became cash flow positive.
So InnovateHer, like up until now, it's been largely bootstrapped. We do, we bring in donations periodically. We bring in small sponsorships periodically. We have not yet seen that substantial, scalable, sustainable check. And so everything that we do is kind of hard scrabble, and we're figuring that out, and we're bringing in, revenue here and revenue there, and like building up these channels. But that's been one of the greatest frustrations for me as a founder. Like, are we dependent on debt financing? Are we dependent on VC? No, we haven't gotten any of that. And that's the kind of money that could be really, really transformational for us and allow us to make a huge difference in the lives of women leaders.
When's the best time to find financing for your business? When you don't need it. It's when you're flush with cash that you need to go out and get that equity, that line of credit that you need. When you're flush with cash is when you go out and get that credit card application. When you have the money, that's when you go and apply for the financing. Doesn't mean you have to use it. You can get creative in how you use it. However, when you need the money, when you're strapped for cash, when you need to make payroll and you don't have enough bucks in the bank, ain't nobody gonna lend you any money. So when you're up, plan ahead. You don't stay up forever. There are always ups and downs in business. There's always going to be something that pops up, some investment that you make, some mistake you make, something that comes out of left field that you didn't even know was coming. So when you're profitable, go out and get that financing that you need or that you should have ahead of time.
The right time to finance your business is at the point where you are ready to grow and scale your business.
So what's the right time to finance your business? Man, that's not even a fair question. Like, there's so many different answers to that. Like, it's different in every sense of the word. I mean, most of the time, in my opinion, the time you want to try to get access to additional capital or funds is when those funds are going to help you grow or do something that you couldn't do without those funds, that after you execute it, the value of your company or the profit that's generated from it grossly grossly exceeds whatever interest, repayment, or equity you might surrender for those funds. Now, if your business is established and you have been profitable for at least 6 months, you very well may qualify for traditional funding or borrowing from a bank. Banks are way into this. This is a lot easier if your business has been around for a while, you show profit, and you just need general working capital or lines of credit. That's what banks can help you with, and they will then compete for your account. So know that too. If you have a profitable business, you're established, and especially if you have some kind of assets that you can show or provide as collateral, then becoming what they call bankable is a heck of a lot easier. It's a lot more accessible, and it's something that people do every day, all day. That's part of what keeps banks open. Some of the best advice that I could give to entrepreneurs that are looking for startup capital or to just fund and finance a business is, you know what? Go out and look for as many places as possible. I know people that are just, they're relentless. They will apply for a loan at as many banks as it takes to find one that's willing to give them a loan. And it's the same thing with investors, whether it's venture capital or angel investors. It really, in the end, it becomes a numbers game. How bad do you want it? You got to go out and chase it. You got to work for it. You got to go out and look for it. The more people you ask, the better chance that you are eventually going to find someone who says yes.
My best advice for businesses that are thinking about being financed or funding their business, if you're going to go for financing, whether it's a loan or VC money or whatever it is, I would not talk to me. Talk to somebody who's actually gone through the process. Talk to a few people who have gone through the process, because you're going to uncover things that they had to experience, mistakes that they've made, lessons that they've learned. So talk to somebody who's actually gone through it. Both who's actually gone through it and failed and gone through it and succeeded, because you're going to learn lessons from both of them.
When you're looking for places to go to fund your business or look for ways to scale your business, I say personally, we started with the Chamber of Commerce. Having a good relationship with your local Chamber of Commerce can go a long ways for you. They typically have a lot of resources at their hand, especially within the small business community. And so you can get grants, you can get all sorts of credits for continuing education. There's just so many different things that you can get within your community. You just have to go out there and look for them.
Oh man, there are so many organizations that I think can help people get their money hats on straight. The Missouri Small Business Development Center, KC SourceLink. I mean, if we're talking nationally, SCORE has like a whole mentorship network and they can help you. But I think one of the most powerful things that companies can do is reach out to their bank. Develop a relationship with a small business banker, commercial banker, ask them questions and see how they can advise you. And I think that having that personal touch and knowing that you're dealing with somebody on the ground who's prepared to work with you and knows your business could be really, really impactful.
My advice for those looking to finance or fund their business, in the beginning, do as much as you can yourself. I mean, that's really the name of the game for just about every step for an entrepreneur, is do as much as you can yourself. As soon as you give up ownership, you give up ownership. And that's probably not why you started. So I would never encourage someone to take on debt, but we did it for our business. That's the only way we could do it. We didn't have family wealth to pull from. We didn't have personal wealth to pull from, and it worked out. We paid it off, That was just the only way we could do it. And we were so determined to get started and do something new that we were willing to take that risk, and it paid off. So my piece of advice for you would be, do as much as you can yourself, bet on yourself first. And once you've exhausted all of those possibilities and avenues for funding, then maybe look outside of yourself, your friends, your family, to someone who would be a potential investor.
You want to find places to get money for your business? Google. Just keep Googling it and looking, and you will find a never-ending sea of results.
All day I drive around in my Beamer. All day I drive around in my